Hey, what is up, guys? This is Thunderstruck115, and today I have got a very special video for y'all. So, in case y'all haven't noticed, I have recently hit the 500 subscriber mark. And all I can say is, thank you guys so much. The amount of support that I've been getting recently is absolutely insane to me. The fact that I have a video with over 30,000 views and over 1,000 likes is insane to me. Like, I honestly never thought that would actually happen, so thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. So, to celebrate, I figured I would tell y'all more about myself and the games I like by doing a top 10 video for my favorite games of all time. Initially, I was planning on doing a Q&A video, but that's kind of a thing that would be better set up in advance with a community post, but the thing is, I have to wait about a week after getting 500 subscribers to be able to use the community tab, so I guess that's just gonna have to wait for another time. So, just a few things to note. Number one, this is just my personal opinion and how much I enjoy these games. Number two, my opinions change with time, so if you're watching this from like several years in the future, there's a good chance that this might be a bit different. And number three, I'm not double dipping with certain franchises. So if there's multiple games in the same franchise that I really would have wanted to put on this list, I'm just gonna condense that down to one entry and just tell you what my favorite games in said franchise are. Otherwise, this whole list would just be the same 2 or 3 franchises getting thrown in here all the time. So let's go ahead and get started. Number 10. Age of Empires is a series of games that I grew up playing. Specifically, Age of Empires 2 and 3. Never played the first one, and when Age of Empires 4 released, I got it on Game Pass, though admittedly, I haven't put as many hours into it as I would have liked to. I probably should go back and play it more. But it's a great RTS game with tons of depth. It's not a strict rock, paper, scissors kind of balancing. There's like hard counters and soft counters. It has a lot of depth to it as well. Additionally, with the maps for skirmish matches being generated randomly, it means that this game has a ton of replay value. Not to mention several single-player campaigns and missions for you to try out. Age of Empires 2 is the best in the series, and one of the best real-time strategy games ever made. And I'm pretty sure most fans of the series would agree with that statement. There's even an in-game map maker that I used to screw around with as a kid. I mean, nothing I actually made with it was all that great or anything, but it's so cool how you can create your own custom levels and shit. And the definitive editions for Age of Empires 2 and 3 were among the first few games that I got when I got my current computer, because my last computer probably wouldn't have been able to run them. But you can never really go wrong with a match of this game. And what I'm saying isn't even scratching the surface. There's so much more to this game than just that. Honestly, I'd highly recommend checking it out. Number 9. Here's a game that I'd bet that not too many of y'all have heard about. Everspace by Rockfish Games. A roguelike 3D space shooter that emphasizes both exploration and combat. The two go hand in hand together as exploring finds you more resources that will help you stay alive, but to do so you'll run into enemies to fight. And this game is hard as fuck. But it's a good kind of hard. It's a fair, fun challenge. With it being a roguelike, it's centered across multiple runs, but the game actually has a good justification for this, where instead of each run just being a separate timeline, instead it's all one continuous timeline, and the justification is that you are playing as a clone. And each time you die, another clone is created, and you have to try and get to the end of the game. In fact, there's even an upgrade you can get where you can find the wreckage of your previous clone ship and retrieve some of your gear. I won't spoil the entire story. If you want to experience it, go play the game. But if you like space shooters or games that are just challenging in general, I would highly recommend Everspace. There's several different ships to play as, different weapons to try out, each with their own upgrades. There's several side quests that are pretty interesting included in the Encounters DLC, which even with the game and the DLC combined is only $40. And if you're buying the console versions, the game is straight up $40, but the DLC is included. And that's at full price. The game goes on sale on Steam very often. Not sure how much about the other platforms. My brother got this game for me back in 2019 for the Nintendo Switch, and once I figured out how to be better at the game, I got hooked. And what really amazes me about this game is just how much there is to it. I remember I had like 50 or so hours in this game. I had already completed the main story and was just doing extra runs because the game is fun, only to jump in to find myself face to face with the goddamn sun. The areas are procedurally generated, and I'd never encountered this kind of hazard before in the game, but it was so cool to see something new, even after beating the main campaign. Later, I got the game on PC, and it's a jolly good time. And while Everspace 2 is still currently in early access, it's shaping up to be an amazing fucking game. If you're a fan of space shooters, or just challenging games in general, I would highly recommend checking this game out. Number 8. Now, I did not grow up playing Bioshock, as it just passed me by when it was new, but in 2021, I bought the Remastered Collection on Steam, and I had a blast. The atmosphere, the immersion, the gameplay, the story, the level design, the resource management, it was all so refreshing to play, honestly. Combat was fun and had some depth to it, encounters were intense. In the setting of an underwater city called Rapture, which is basically a libertarian utopia until it went horribly wrong, which is one of the coolest fucking settings I've ever experienced in a video game. Plus, you had Andrew Ryan, which is one of the coolest villains of all time. Bioshock 2 took what was great about Bioshock 1 and just improved upon it. It fixed a few issues I had with the original, namely the hacking minigame, the research camera, and the fact that you couldn't use plasmids and guns at the same time, while also making improvements to plasmids, weapon upgrades, the Little Sisters, and more. And overall is my favorite game in this series. Bioshock Infinite was alright. I think it was a good game, just not as great as the first two. Like, the gameplay was definitely scaled back, and the story was just a convoluted fucking mess. Spoiler alert, it involves time travel and multiple realities. But even then, I still think it was a good game, just not particularly great. But Bioshock 1 and 2 are fucking amazing. It's captivating in its story, captivating in its gameplay, in its level design, in its world building. I'm honestly glad I went back and tried the games, even though they were over a decade old by the time I played them, because I had a fucking blast. Number 7. If you thought Everspace was a game that few people have heard of, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, because in our number 7 spot we have Defender from 2002, released for the GameCube, PS2, and original Xbox. It's a space shooter, but a very arcadey one, which, funnily enough, I only recently learned that it was based off an arcade game from 1981. But this game is fairly unique because in addition to just regular space shooting elements, there's also a lot of strategy involved as well. You have to rescue colonists, which function as objectives, but also as a resource of sorts. You can put them into certain kinds of factories that are scattered around the level, which make different things. You can put some colonists into a regular one, and it'll give you power-ups to refill your health and ammo. Or you can use it to make tanks, which are great against ground targets, but not so much against air targets. And then missile crawlers, which are good against air targets, but not ground targets. And even repair stations, which will fix up your ship, as well as any nearby allies you might have. And it's more involved than it might initially seem, because some enemies, such as the Widow Crawlers, are really tough to kill on your own, but the tanks excel against them. So it's not just mechanical skill of your own flying and shooting, but you have to think about how to best place your allies and use your colonists in order to get through the missions. It's a very challenging game, and the game itself isn't all that long, only about like an hour or two, but it is so damn replayable. In fact, I only beat it like about 2 months ago for the first time, even though I've had this game on the GameCube since I was a fucking kid. It's honestly a shame that this game never got ported to modern systems, nor was it ever ported to PC, which means I don't think it'll ever get a resurgence. Especially because it wasn't even all that popular to begin with. Which is a fucking shame because I haven't played any other game quite like it. And even though some of the levels are optional, I always do all of them, except for Mara Frigoris, because fuck that mission. But the rest are great, and there's multiple ship types and upgrades you can use. It's a real shame that the game was never made available on modern systems. But if you're looking for a game from the 6th generation that you want to try out, look no further than Defender. Whether you want to get it on original hardware or use an emulator like Dolphin, it's a great experience. And while I highly doubt this will ever happen, if I were to make a video game, it would be a spiritual successor to this. Number 6. I remember the first time I played Dishonored. It was in 2019. My sister got me Dishonored 2 for my birthday, which came with a download code for Dishonored 1. I played Dishonored 1 first, and enjoyed the game quite a bit. Tried playing Dishonored 2, but I put it down after the 4th mission because of how bad the performance issues were on base Xbox One. Then when I got my Series X and I heard that Dishonored 1 got boosted to 60 FPS, I played it again, and then I played it again, and then again, and then again. I got hooked. I then tried Dishonored 2, and while unfortunately it hasn't gotten boosted to 60 FPS on the Series X like the rest of the series, the fact that it was a stable 30 FPS let me complete it, and then again, and then again, and then again, and then again. These games nail their stealth gameplay. The level design allows for several different options, each with its own challenges. You also get supernatural powers which allow you to do things from traversing the environment, to distracting enemies, to giving you extra ways to sneak around, or to give you extra ways to fight enemies. Dishonored 2 increased the amount of lethal and non-lethal options that you have for dealing with enemies, and improved the level design, and is in my opinion an ideal sequel. And then, of course, we have DLCs. The Knife of Dunwall and the Brigmore Witches DLCs for Dishonored 1 are some of the best DLCs in all of gaming. The Dunwall City Trials also gave you a series of disconnected challenges to try out. The only one I didn't really like was Death of the Outsider, which was a standalone expansion for Dishonored 2. It made some changes that negatively impacted the gameplay, and the story wasn't really all that encapsulating for me there. But I can at least appreciate that it tried something new, and like I said, it was more of a standalone expansion than the full game. Because, I mean, at the time, Arcane's A-Team was working on Prey, which is also a great game, by the way. The setting is also really damn cool. Set in the fictional Empire of the Isles, you play as Corvo Attano, the royal protector for the Empress, who then gets assassinated and her death blamed on you. But a loyalist conspiracy breaks you out of prison before you're executed. You then take up the role of assassin, eliminating those who have wronged you. And then Dishonored 2 takes place 15 years after the events of the first game, where Corvo and the Empress's daughter, Emily, is now Empress. A coup happens, and either Corvo or Emily, whoever you choose to play as, I usually go with Emily, must head to the southern island of Sirtis and the city of Karnaca, and do mostly the same thing. The city of Dunwall is based off of Industrial Revolution Britain, and Sirtis seems to be based off of Italy from around that same time period. It's a very interesting setting because not that many games really do something like that. The world building is excellent too. You can overhear conversations between guards talking about their day. In fact, one of my favorite ones is in one of the later missions in Dishonored 1, where two guards talk about one of the big assassination targets, and depending on what you do, their conversation will be different, and they're somewhat nonchalant about it, as if it's something they read in the newspaper, which if you think about it, they probably did. And the game has all sorts of mini cutscenes, as well as optional audio logs, letters, and books and shit, that really flesh out the world and make Dunwall and Karnaca feel like a real living place. The plot and characters are also really damn good. And it actually has a really good implementation of a morality system. Because you're framed in both games, the guards turn against you, not out of malice or anything, but because they're misinformed. But at the same time, they're kinda your subjects, so you don't just want to go around killing them willy-nilly. So dealing with them non-lethally will lead to a better ending. This is even more compelling in Dishonored 1 because during that time there's something known as the Rat Plague, and the more people you kill, the worse the disease gets. And Dishonored 2 has something similar with the Blood Flies. But it's not so suffocatingly strict like, say, Undertale. This game allows you to kill some human targets, meaning if you really want to, you can still kill the major assassination targets and still get the low chaos ending. Honestly, I could go on and on about these games, but if you're a fan of stealth games, or just games that are extremely immersive, I'd highly recommend these games. Number 5. Command & Conquer, the premier real-time strategy series. I grew up playing these games, and honestly, they're still really damn good. It's much faster paced than something like, say, Age of Empires, as a skirmish match usually lasts around half an hour, but it's a lot of fun. There's several different options for you to use. Factions are a lot more distinct, as in the mainline games you have GDI, a UN peacekeeping organization, and then there's the Brotherhood of Nod, an underground secret society vying for control over the world using a new substance known as Tiberium. And then, of course, in the Red Alert universe, you have an alternate future where Einstein went back in time and killed Randolph Shitlord, meaning World War II never happened. At least not as we know it, but this led to an alternate timeline where the Allies and Soviets go on full-out war against each other. And then, of course, there's the standalone title Generals, which is just a take on modern combat. Each of these games are very distinct from each other, and I really enjoy them. Well, except for that one game that we don't talk about, which was released back in 2010, and then nothing. Until 2018, where we got a shitty mobile game. But then in 2020, we got remakes of the first two games, and they did pretty well, so hopefully this shows EA that people like Command & Conquer and would like to see more of it. Of course, this is EA we're talking about, so I'm not exactly optimistic. But the older games, specifically the Westwood ones, are fucking amazing. The first two games were extremely revolutionary, and then Tiberian Sun and Red Alert 2 were even better. Generals offered a unique take on everything. I also heard that Kane's Wrath is pretty damn good, though I haven't played it yet. Renegade was a very interesting FPS spin-off of the series, and even Red Alert 3 was pretty good. Red Alert 2 still stands as my all-time favorite, and is in my opinion, peak RTS. With lots of depth to its gameplay, several maps, multiple campaigns that are all great, and not to mention it's accompanied by a kick-ass soundtrack, cause Command & Conquer as a series has my pick for the best video game soundtrack ever. Like, listening to these tunes just makes me want to go and play another match. And the cutscenes for the campaign, it really did help you feel like you were a commander, and they've got this nice little charm to them, where they're kind of somewhat campy, but in a very charming way. Maybe it's the nostalgia talking, but I fucking love these games, even to this day. Number 4. Is there another game quite like FTL Faster Than Light? I really don't think there is. This game is a real-time strategy roguelike where you get to be the captain of your own ship. Fairly simple story, you're one of the last few ships remaining in the Federation, who is being quickly overtaken by the rebels, but you carry data that's vital to the survival of the Federation, that being the weakness of the rebel flagship. Your goal is to get to Sector 8, deliver the data, and then destroy the rebel flagship. Fairly simple, but the real story is what happens along the way, as each time it's a completely different experience. Through RNG and procedural generation, each sector is different. There's many different types of sectors, each offering opportunities and challenges. Gameplay is the driving factor here. No matter where you go, there will be ships to fight. And there's many different ways to do so. You have a wide variety of weapons, like lasers, which act as your basic things, missiles, which can bypass shields but run on a limited supply of ammo, beams, which can cut across entire ships but get completely negated by shields, ions, which can temporarily disable enemy systems, and so much more. But straight up shooting them to death isn't your only option. You can harass them with drones, use a teleporter to beam your crew inside and kill the enemy crew, use mind control and hacking, activate combat augments, and so much more. This game is very fucking difficult, but it's a lot of fun, and it's usually fair. You'll have to manage resources to upgrade your ship and your crew, which come in several different species, by the way, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. There's 10 main ship types you can pilot, with each of them having 3 different variations, except for the Lanius and Crystal Cruisers, which only have 2. And even with the same ship, the experience is driven by what you find. Like, I could play 5 different runs of this game back-to-back with the same ship and have 5 completely different experiences. That is how fucking replayable this game is. And if the base game isn't enough for you, well, there's always mods. There's many different mods out there for FTL. Some just add new ships and weapon types, to other mods which completely overhaul the game. My personal favorite is FTL Captain's Edition, as it adds so much more content to the game, adding more weapons, features, augments, an entire economy where you can sell trade goods between shops to make some extra scrap, and even entirely new species, AI avatars. But it doesn't stop there, there's even a Star Wars mod, a fucking Doctor Who TARDIS mod, and so much more. This is one of the most replayable games I have ever played, and I could not recommend it enough. It's an indie game that came out in 2012, so it's fairly cheap on Steam, so if you haven't taken the plunge, I would highly recommend doing so. Number 3. Back in 2020, I was actually stuck at my grandma's house for about 2 weeks when quarantine first started, since my brother was traveling abroad and he had to self-quarantine for 2 weeks, so I couldn't be near him during that time. During that time, I had my Switch with my NSO subscription, and during that time, I tried out Super Metroid, and I fell in love with it because I never quite played anything like it. And the Metroid series is incredibly unique. I later went through the rest of the 2D series, with the exception of Samus Returns, because I need to find a copy of that for a decent price. I also tried the first 2 Prime games on the GameCube, and it's a jolly good time. These are some of the most immersive games I have ever played, crafting intricate worlds with tons of history and optional backstory that you can find. In fact, this game's approach to optional storytelling is quite genius, and it's clear that games like Bioshock, Dark Souls, and Dishonored were at least in part inspired by the Metroid series and how they handle their optional storytelling. At least from the Prime games, anyway. Then there's the gameplay. You'd think that running around collecting items to open up progression gates might not be a particularly engaging gameplay loop. And yeah, I guess that's probably why this series is as niche as it is. But if it clicks with you, it is one of the best experiences you will ever have in a video game. Especially considering that this game embraces player freedom. At least the 2D games do, and that's why I tend to prefer the 2D side-scrollers over the Prime games. If you get skilled enough with Samus's moveset, you can break these games wide fucking open, offering a degree of freedom that's only matched in open-world games, but without all the drawbacks of open-world games such as pacing issues. The games are usually short, but they're incredibly replayable because of how many ways there are to route it. And it's fun to optimize your routes through this game. And while the gameplay in the Prime games might not be as tight as the 2D side-scrollers, it triples down on player immersion. The worlds of Talon 4 from Prime 1 and Aether from Prime 2 just suck you in. And honestly, the only reason I haven't tried Prime 3 yet is because I don't have my Wii anymore. Though, I guess I could try playing it on Prime Hack. And I know the series doesn't click with everyone, but it clicked for me, and it clicked hard. To the point where in 2021, when they announced Metroid Dread, this was my reaction. Yes! Yes! If you haven't played this series, give it a try. Maybe it might not click for you, and that's fine. But if it does, then enjoyment awaits. Number 2. It's no secret that I love Call of Duty, particularly zombies. It's what I've based my channel around for the past 5 years or so, before I started branching out fairly recently. But I still love the games, and I like Call of Duty overall, well, at least back when it was, like, great. Over time, starting with Ghost, the series did begin to decline, and then we hit a very low point with Vanguard. But all the Xbox 360 COD games are great. I also really like Black Ops 3 and 4, moderately enjoy Cold War. Ghosts was fairly decent as I actually enjoyed the Extinction mode, and I also kind of enjoyed the multiplayer. Cold War ain't half bad either, though it certainly ain't great. And Modern Warfare 2019 was refreshing. Unfortunately, Activision's got their heads so far up their ass that they can eat what they had for dinner twice. But hopefully by the recent acquisition of Activision by Microsoft, maybe things can turn around for the good. Overall, my favorite game in the series has to be Black Ops 2. Best multiplayer overall, great zombies in campaign as well. If we're talking strictly zombies, Black Ops 3 is my favorite, with Black Ops 4 at a close second. Yeah, I'm one of the few people that actually likes Black Ops 4 zombies. Though, if you watch my responses to Tim Hansen and Chopper, I'm sure y'all knew that by now. And when the multiplayer is good, it's really good. And while I certainly don't play Call of Duty for the campaign because it doesn't really have that deep of a combat system, I'll usually play it once and enjoy it for the story. Might as well since I already have the entire package. And while the series certainly has gone downhill, I still really do enjoy playing some of the older games, especially zombies. And finally, number 1. When I first saw Halo, I was blinded by its majesty, paralyzed, dumbstruck. My first exposure to the series was Halo 3 at a babysitter's house sometime in 2009. Then later, when I got an Xbox 360, I lived and breathed Halo Reach. Then later got Halo 4. Most of my memories from that era of playing Halo were mostly playing custom games with my brother and sometimes his friends out through Xbox Live, and it was a jolly good time. Tried Halo 5 when it released, but quickly put it down. But what really sparked my love for Halo was in late 2018 when I heard Master Chief Collection got fixed, so I got it for Christmas that year, and I just completely fell in love with the series. But not necessarily just the multiplayer, but it was actually the campaigns that captivated me the most. I ran through all of them on normal with my brother in split screen, then I tried playing them on myself, then one day I felt froggy and decided, you know what, fuck it, let's try Halo Combat Evolved on Legendary, and I proceeded to get my shit kicked in, but through perseverance I was able to get it to work, started Halo 2, got my shit kicked in way fucking harder, but started looking up advanced Halo strategies to try and get me through on Legendary, and once I did that, I started having a lot more fun with these campaigns on Legendary. Admittedly, I probably should have played more on Heroic before jumping straight into Legendary, but most of the time around that era when I did play Halo campaigns, it was on Heroic, except for whatever campaign I was trying to beat on Legendary at the time. And over time, I just got better at the game, played mainly on Heroic for a while, but then one day I felt froggy again, pumped it up back to Legendary, and now I primarily play Halo campaigns on Legendary, except Halo 2. These campaigns have a very deep combat system, and to go over it in detail would be beyond the scope of this video. But it's really cool how enemies have different strengths and weaknesses. You have to plan what weapons would be the best to take into an encounter, and when you know the game's systems and start bumping up the difficulty to Heroic or Legendary, then the game transforms from just a regular first-person shooter to an experience well above that. One that is infinitely replayable, no pun intended. The only campaign I'd say is straight up bad is Halo 5. It's the only one I have never completed on Legendary because I started a Legendary run, but I put it down and just haven't gone back to it yet because I just don't enjoy Halo 5 all that much. But the others are pretty fun. I know a lot of people also hate Halo 4, and while I certainly don't think it's anywhere near as good as the Bungie games, I still have fun with it. Overall, my favorite game in the series has to be Halo Reach. Although, if you ask me what my favorite multiplayer component is for Halo, that would actually be Halo 2. But I think Reach's campaign just does the best job of providing the player multiple options on Legendary, and is also really well balanced, except Long Night of Solace, fuck Long Night of Solace. But overall, I love these Halo campaigns, except for Halo 5, but even Halo 2 and Halo 4 are good. More than good. In fact, I love these campaigns. They're some of my most replayed games, and while other first-person shooter games come and go, I always end up winding back to playing Halo. Sure, sometimes I'll go weeks, even months without playing it, but I always end up winding back to there. because they're so damn fun and replayable. I urge you, if you think Halo is just a run-of-the-mill shooter in the campaign department, bump that difficulty up to heroic and learn the game's mechanics, because it will transform your experience. It did for me. As for the multiplayer, I don't really play it as much as I've kind of fallen off multiplayer shooters in the last few years, but it's pretty fun. Again, multiplayer-wise, Halo 2 is my favorite. I like them all, although admittedly Halo CE and Halo 3 is a bit reliant on precision weapon spam from a distance. But as it stands, Halo is my favorite game series of all time, and Halo Reach is my current favorite game of all time. And that is my top 10 games list, as of October 22nd, 2022. But anyways, I just want to once again thank all of y'all for giving me the support that y'all have. The fact that I've come this far is unfucking real to me. So thank you for supporting me. I really do appreciate it. But anyways, that's going to be about it for this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more. And tell me what you think of my picks for top 10 games. Have you played any of them? And if you haven't, do you plan on it? Let me know. But anyways, that's it. Peace!